Greetings, entities and guardians. My name is HyperHimes, and you may not know who the other person is, but this is the actual faction leader of all the ships. Depending on if it's a friendship or a relationship, we have Mahimeghan here with us.
Hello, I'm Mahimeghan. I'm a cookie run YouTuber as well, on occasion, actually for the most part, and I do think about cookie run ships a lot.
This is exactly why I want to make this video, because I just want to point out, this whole tier list was actually made by them. I was like, oh, this is actually very impressive, but before this happened, I actually came up with this video idea because I saw this tier list. This tier list sucks. I don't know how to say it, but like, some of these ships, you know, I can see, but like, first, you don't see, I don't know, mint Coco. You don't see sea moon. I guess you see like some obvious things like, I don't know, like, you know, white vanilla and like other things.
We usually call it pure lily.
Yeah, pure lily. It doesn't matter. It feels like there's not enough, like especially if you don't have the iconic ones. And then I managed to find another one. Look how long this is. Just look how many ships there are. There's too many. There's too many. Some of them are unloaded. That's how too many there are. So basically, after seeing all this, why is this one like this? Why is Pepperoncino away from cauliflower? Like that's
they couldn't even get to stand next to each other for a photo.
It's social distancing right there. Apparently, Mahi was like, you know what? Let's make a better tier list with things that are popular, but also not too many ships to fill up the whole thing. So apparently, as far as I know, these are like some of the most popular ships in the fandom that people care about.
These are the ones that I thought people care about. I'm a bit more fandom involved than Himes is, so I'm checking AO3 and Twitter and fan arts and stuff, and these are the ones where I've all seen like a good chunk of fan art and a good chunk of like posts concerning them. I wanted to make a list that wasn't too long, but also it was like, these are all the ships that people can immediately recognize when they think of cookie run ships.
You're basically better in the department of actual information and things about online interests. I'm just better at screaming at a microphone playing a funny cookie game.
Yeah, I read the cookie run stories on my own. I don't even read all of them. Some of them I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna care about this one. But then I'll see a character and it's just like, I think I'm gonna read this one this time. I put them all in alphabetical order based on what I loaded them in as on my computer. Most of the ships, they end up getting ship names from fandom. This is just kind of how they alphabetized when I loaded them into Tier Maker.
Some might kill you, some might you ship with.
And you can do both with Abyss Monarch.
True.
I guess we'll start off with them. Abyssal, as it's called. I've been on an Abyssal kick, personally, because Blossom and I have been on an Abyssal kick. I specifically remember, Blossom sent me a screenshot. She sent me a tweet that was Abyssal fan art. And she was like, I think I might read this story now. And then she started live tweeting, basically, the story in my DMs. And she said, these characters are dangerous. And I said, dangerous as in, like, dangerous as in they could kill people? And she said, no. Dangerous to my autism.
Oh.
This one especially, Abyssal, if Abyssal had existed several months ago when I made my video about all the ships that I ship, they would definitely have had a good 2-minute segment about their dynamic. But in order to sum it up in layman's terms, I've always been attracted to the dynamic of a character that's shyer, that has like trauma and internal struggles, and a more lax character who's able to get them out of their shell, so to speak. And that's exactly what Abyssal is. It's like written for Megan. It's Megan coded. This is one of those ships that's like, Megan's going to ship this. I take one look at it. It reminds me of an old ship from another franchise I really liked, so I was just like, I'm going down the same pipeline again. So Abyssal is definitely like OTP tier for me. I don't know how you feel about it, honestly.
See, personally, I'm on the tier of like, I'd say I'm kind of in the mix between really like and like, because I do understand where you come from and saying like, you know, having a certification of just like liking the trauma pass filled characters and then also another character who's more lax. Because you have to bear in mind, that's the whole entire concept of not even just like, you know, the both of them, but also being in Wander Crab. Because that's the city that, like, the underwater city that they're in. And the main concept of that is you don't have to worry about your past. You just have to worry about being there. It doesn't have to be about, like, you know, the best past that you ever had or even a huge traumatic past. What matters is that you two are there and you're just there to have a fun time. And I think that's a good representation of the ship because, you know, of course, Abyss Monarch didn't really have it good back then. But being in Wander Crab, it's supposed to be a place where you're supposed to just be vibing now. Like, nothing matters about the past or nothing even matters about the future. It just matters where you're hanging out, and why you're just hanging out there. And I gotta be honest, I do appreciate them for what they represent, in all honesty.
We like it. We like Abyssal. We can put it in the red-yellow zone.
I'd say, like, maybe peak really like.
Yeah, we can put it there.
No, we have Adventure and Blackberry, which I think this is a very different feeling.
Adventure and Blackberry, for me personally, based on what we have in canon, I see Blackberry as someone who is very job-oriented and focused on her job. I can't see Blackberry dating Adventurer, but I can see Adventurer having feelings for her. I don't think it's gonna work out as a date thing, but I do think that they are like ride or die. I would be like, Blackberry would bail him out of jail if she needed to, I think. I don't think he's getting in jail, maybe for like drinking age or something, but like, he's probably in his 30s if we're being real, but maybe for like smoking marijuana somewhere he shouldn't have, smoking hoo-hoo, I guess we could say, because this is Cookie Run.
Piped out adventurer.
I don't see them dating, but I do see them as like inseparable.
Honestly, I do understand that, because the thing is, what never made sense with me, because like, I feel like some people would look at Blackberry and Adventure and think like, oh, the reason why Blackberry wants to go after Adventure so much is because she cares. But honestly, I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just because, you know, probably just wants them to get like back here and just not hurt, but not just for like, you know, safety, but just for more like, can you not become reckless? You can definitely tell that they don't vibe with each other much. Like, of course they hang out with each other tons, but like, obviously I don't sense any love, in my opinion. Like, maybe I could see, you know, Adventure liking Blackberry, but the thing is, like, you could tell that Adventure Cookie's all about the adventure. It's literally in his name, so I think adventure is gonna be his top priority. And of course, I don't think he would go, in my personal opinion, like an extra mile into, like, let's say marrying Blackberry, because I feel like that would deteriorate him from going on huger adventures. You probably could say the argument, oh, we'll just bring Blackberry. But Blackberry doesn't have that vibe. She's meant to be, you know, like, you know, the maid, the mistress, the one who, like, you know, cleans up everything, like, cleans up Adventurer's mess. I'm not saying that's literally probably her primary personality. I mean, she also has the whole capabilities of seeing ghosts and all that. I don't know, I don't see it click. I can kind of see it clicking, just not that much, if that makes any sense.
What I would do is I would say, I guess I would edit the tier maker and be like, have one that's like, I can't see it happening. I can't see Adventurer and Blackberry getting together. I like their dynamic as what they are right now. I don't think it needs to be a relationship.
I guess we could just throw in indifferent.
Yeah, that works.
Because it's just kind of more like, I mean, hey, it does kind of exist in a way. Like, they're together a lot, but like, it's just kind of odd. Now, I'd like to see how the crime person and the crime stopper gets together.
Almond is... People know about me and Roguefort. I can't see Roguefort getting together with a man. That's a personal thing. That's a headcanon. That's not what canon says. That's just a me thing. I know they're on friendly terms in canon. Well, like, Almond is, like, sympathetic to Roguefort because they think that had fate turned out a little differently, they wouldn't have to go down the route they're currently going.
Right.
I don't ship it. I do think they have an interesting character dynamic. I like that they don't, like, hate each other or anything, but I think it's more just, like, I think it's more a funny situationship if they're not dating. I think it's more funny if they get into scenarios where it looks like something romantic could be going on between them, but it's just, like, a big misunderstanding. But I cannot see them getting together.
Honestly, I am same. I'm just a little bit more harsh on it, only just because, you know, you obviously know the personalities of both Roguefort and Almond. Almond is just like, you know, this long-aged, hardened crime stopper who's had a lot of sleepless nights just trying to stop crime, only just to wake up to probably a bunch of coffee. And then you have Roguefort, who's probably one of the most esteemed crime people in all of Cookie Run OvenBreak, and soon to be Kingdom, maybe. And I just don't see them as a relationship couple, mainly just because if they were to date, it would completely destroy either or, like, it doesn't matter if it's Roguefort's or Almond Cookie's story, it would still ruin it, because, like, you know, if a cop was dating, like, you know, a criminal, how does that make sense? That's kind of breaching your own, like, protocol code, and you know what? You'd probably most likely just get fired, and you probably just get turned to a crime stopper yourself. And if you're a criminal dating a cop, that feels like some sort of a setup, if anything, how to get yourself instantly thrown into a cell like some sort of a plan. If you're gonna be dating a cop friend, there's probably gonna be other cop friends around, and they'll probably easily recognize him. I just personally don't see it because their dynamic is literally the opposite of it. Like I mentioned, you know, off camera, just talking, I could see them as amazing rivals. But as an actual ship where they're together, it makes no sense to me.
It could be a fun fake dating trope fanfic. I think it would be a fun fake dating trope fanfic, but it wouldn't end up as like a real dating. It would just be like they're messing with people in order to get out of jail free. I think the situationship they have going on canon as is funny. I don't want it to change. I like where they're at now. I don't want it to develop beyond that.
We could probably just throw it in indifferent because this really doesn't seem like one we would really hate heavily. Like, I would hate it more, but the thing is, like, of course, if you're talking about comedic effect, oh yeah, it works.
This is the funniest duo we have. And then we get Almond Latte. To me, Almond Latte is just, there's no flavor to me. To me, it's a very...
True.
It's a very plain ship. There's nothing wrong with Almond Latte, but there's no... This is not a pumpkin spice latte. This is a regular Dunkin' Donuts latte we're talking about. This is like the cheapest option on the shelf. Like, it's fine. If you ship it, go for it. But neither Almond nor Latte are characters that I, like, go goo goo gaga over, for lack of a better term. And it's just, this is just such an easy thing to ship. You don't have to do mind games to see how they'd get there. But I like them better. I like them better as, like, coworker that gets on your nerves but has your best interest in mind.
That's fair, honestly. When you just mentioned, like, maybe, like, a normal, neutral, basic, like, pumpkin latte, not like a pumpkin spice one, that hit the nail on the head so hard. Because the only connections I can see with Almond Latte is that they're basically mentors for Cream Puff. Because the only time where you can see a solid connection between them all is through the update where I think it ironically introduced Tea Knight and Eclair, which, I don't know if it's on here, but we'll get to that later. But anyway.
We'll get to them later.
The only reason why people would place them together is because, like, you know, they would seem like a mom and dad for Cream Puff, if that makes sense. Ironically, I think is another reason why people would ship Adventure and Blackberry, because they seem like a parental figure for Onion Cookie, which, if those are your parental figures, then please survive past the age of 5. That's all I'm gonna say. Like you mentioned, I really don't see a flair.
Are we insinuating, Himes? Are we insinuating that Adventure Berry and Almond Latte are bad parental figures on this channel?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, one goes out to adventure a lot, and one's another, like, you know, maid who takes directions, and one's just like a cop who hasn't had any sleep. One's a teacher with a giant oversized spoon who's probably gonna ask you for your ice cream.
You think a giant oversized spoon? Do you think Latte is asking kids for their ice cream?
Only a spoonful.
Only a spoonful. I guess that puts us in another spoonful of indifference.
Probably, yeah, like, probably would put it at, like low no thank you, only because, like, at least with Almond Roguefort, I can see it as a comedic factor. This one just kind of feels like there's no flavor.
There's nothing in it for either of us here. They can go in no thank you, I guess.
Yeah, but, like, if there was tiers, I'd say, like, not that far down. Now, speaking of far down, we have a criminal, another criminal, and a criminal stopper.
I wouldn't call Rai a criminal stopper. I think Rai is something of a criminal in herself. She's more... They're both after the money. They're definitely both money hungry. I think they need more development because we have, like, one side quest with them, and then, like, nothing. Which is kind of a theme in Cookie Run, where it's like, okay, you get this one story. Hope you don't mind waiting 2 years for something more to happen between you two.
Honestly, that is another thing. Like, this is actually, I think, one of the more really popular ships, but they've only had, like, one interaction ever. At least with Rai, she keeps on quoting Chili Pepper Cookie, just like, you ever seen that red person walking around or whatever? I don't think it works, because, like, sure, you could say, the only time they've had something going on together, as far as I remember in the story, is with, when they were actually meeting each other, but they couldn't recognize who each other was. It's only until, like, a certain point where Rai was like, wait, that's that person on the bounty thing. They mess with each other in dangerous ways. Like, I'm pretty sure they had a standoff with each other, I'm pretty sure.
I think the if I remember correctly, the story between them is that at first they were, like, on good terms, and then Chili stole something from Rye, and Rye got mad at her for it. And then it just sort of ends with them kind of being at odds with each other, but not like super duper at odds with each other. But it's just like neither of these characters have been important in a hot minute, because like Chili Pepper used to be important in the main story, and then like after we got out of Hollyberry, they were just like, we're just gonna drop Custard the Third and Chili from the main story and just focus on Wizard, Brave, and Strawberry. We're just not gonna bother with Chili Pepper anymore. And I know that Sophie No Sleep thinks that that's a good idea, but I personally am very against it. I want my Custard and I want my Chili back.
I really want my Custard, I'll agree.
But back on the topic of Chili Rye, I like it. I think they have a great aesthetic. I think you could do so much more with them, but Dev Sisters simply isn't focusing on their relationship right now, and because of it, they've become really stagnant. Chili Rye is at a place where there's not even much the fandom can do. They really need like another big update in order to push them back into the more popular ship hemisphere, because they've just been the same for so long. They have a great color scheme. They look great together. They look great next to each other, but it's just, we need more like original story content in order to make them something that I can really get back into.
That is, like, if I had a tier that was customized for this, it would probably be like underdeveloped, since I feel like
you can customize them, you know.
I'm gonna have to do editing. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Stop. There we go. I'm gonna throw it in underdeveloped because there's only been one. You know what would have been better? There should at least been a dream segment with like the whole Milky Way Wish event where
oh my god,
dreams.
They should have gotten a dream segment. That would have been hilarious.
Because I think my favorite thing about the ship is the setting. You have the hardcore criminal who probably has like a bunch of money over the head, and then you have the Western cookies probably gonna take him in.
Crunchy Dreams is a whole wrench in a lot of ships, but we'll get to that later. Now we gotta get onto the Republicans.
Yeah, we gotta get onto those shiny looking ones.
Those shiny, upstanding Republicans. This is another one that's just, I don't ship them. If you do, good for you. I think one of the things that stands out to me is that in the very beginning of the Creme Republic story, like in the very first cutscene in Odyssey, they're like assigning Financier to him. Like, it's alluded that Financier, that's not like her main job of protecting Clotted Cream. They like assign her to him, and he's like, no, I don't need a guard. And then they're like, yes, you do. And then he's like, okay, I'll take Financier with me. Which is really, I think it's an important thing that should be touched upon more, because since they're together like the entire time, it's basically, I think most people forget about that scene and kind of assume that it's like her job in an almost like Blackberry type way, that like that's what she's been doing forever. But I think it's just like her temporary assignment, and because Odyssey is so long, it just feels like what she's been doing forever. But I do think, not in the ship way, I think it's interesting as a gameplay mechanic, where if you have the both of them in your team, Financier will do like higher protection to Clotted Cream specifically. I thought that was going to be a mechanic with Frilled Jellyfish and Black Pearl, but nothing exists like that for them. So, but back to the ship itself, it's very like lukewarm for me. I don't go crazy over them. I see it as a working only relationship. I guess I'd put it in indifferent.
I would personally say indifferent too. Now, I would say higher indifferent, and I would probably put like from top, like left to right. I feel like left ones are like more like they're on a better scale, because I think Clotted Cream and Financier are actually like, if Adventure and Blackberry was done a bit better, because I feel like, you know, Financier would have a reason to protect Clotted Cream more, because, you know, I feel like, I don't know, some very distinguished person representing the Republic would be a lot more makes sense to protect than like some reckless adventurer. And I will admit, I haven't even finished the entirety of the Cookie Odyssey storyline, which I know, huge dramatic sin. I should be blaming myself, but I will mention, you're right, I've barely seen any of Financier, which should make sense, because when you look at all the main cookies that you've seen around there, you have, you know, a primary cookie and usually a cookie that's aside them, you know? You had Hollyberry and there's Wildberry. dark cacao, and there's crunchy chip. And then with Clyde Cream, you would see most likely Financier, and I'm assuming with pure vanilla it would be gingerbread, but with the protagonist power.
It should have been Black Raisin.
Yeah.
It should have been Black Raisin. I don't know why we're entrusting a random 12-year-old with the fate of the world, but cookie run logic, I suppose.
He's slaying a cookie witch, I guess, even though they had the powers of other 4 cookies and they're not there. Who cares?
Cross-string time.
Yeah, cross-string. I don't know about you. I would like to hear your opinion. This one's high.
Cross-string is... I don't know. Cross-string is another one of those... I think it was written well. I would argue that there's definitely something going on String Gummy's behalf for Croissant. You could say that's either like a deep respect or a deep friendship. I could definitely get behind arguing that there's a romantic sort of tension between him and Director Croissant. As for this one specifically, I think I had a moment with them where I really liked it, and then I saw like some other characters and like, you know how like they have the meme with like ADHD where it's like squirrel, and then you like look at something else. It was like me, I had like 1 minute where I was like, oh, yeah, I think I like this. And then like I saw some other characters and I stopped paying attention.
Right. I guess on my take, the reason why I like it is, in a sense, it feels kind of like a passing the torch feel. Because it kind of feels like, you know, after everything that String Gummy and Director Croissant's been through, and String Gummy had to experience, well, spoiler alert, Croissant of the Director timeline fades away, in front of String Gummy's eyes. I can't believe I spoiled it for you. And String Gummy returns back into the timeline with normal Croissant, and it kind of feels like they're gonna have this sort of relationship where it kind of feels like String Gummy knows a lot of things from their timeline, but it feels kind of like they also want to learn from Croissant again, despite technically knowing more than her in the timeline that they're currently in, which I know since we're talking about timelines, it's so confusing, but Director Croissant taught String Gummy everything, especially with the regard where he is like trying to do everything for her. Now he's in the timeline where it feels like he can learn from the younger newbie Croissant because she's actually focusing on not, you know, being the director instead of being the best mechanic. So, of course, he's still probably going to provide any way, shape, or form to help, except it's going to be in a different light this time, which I think is very adorable in its own aspect.
I do think that. I do agree with you there. I guess it's more of the these two characters aren't really my favorites, so I tend to not pay attention to them, but I do like the dynamic they have going on here.
I would at least say put it in just the nature like I like it.
Yeah.
I
can agree on that.
Well. I'd love to hear your opinion on this one.
I have a whole 9 minutes of my opinion on this one. We do not need to spend too much time here, but I will go over it again.
Imagine if I just edited the whole video right there.
You put the entire 9-minute video, but you like speed it up to like 4 times the speed.
Here it is at like 500 times the speed.
Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, my opinion of Espressolen is that absolutely no on the relationship front, on the romantic relationship front, absolutely not my thing. But, and this is a big but, I like where they are in canon. I like how they're allowing themselves to explore new possibilities in each other. I think, like, for me, there was a big turning point with Espressolen when the Odyssey update came out, because before Odyssey, all we saw of Espressolen was just sort of Espresso putting Madeleine down, and Madeleine just sort of like walling him out almost in a way that he like didn't even really care what was happening and like wasn't even like processing that he was being put down. But through Odyssey, we've seen that these two can be acquaintances, even if it was initially begrudgingly on Espresso's side. We do see that these two are able to work together. Like, Odyssey, I'm not sure how far in it, but basically it implies that these two are basically forced proximity sort of thing. Like, Espresso has to work with Madeleine against his will, but they've come to be able to, like, come to an understanding where they can work together and do things for the betterment of other cookies and not just get on each other's nerves, or, well, have Madeleine get on Espresso's nerves. I like where they are in the story because Odyssey ends with them going their own separate ways, and I think by going their own separate ways, they've learned new things about each other and they're becoming more developed people and characters, I don't want them to stay together and sort of stagnate in that sort of, oh, Espresso is mean to Madeleine and Madeleine just takes it with a smile on his face, because that's a very stagnant relationship to me. But I think these characters have evolved and become something really dynamic, and I like them where they are. I don't want them to get into a relationship, but I do think Madeleine has been able to bring out the sort of altruistic and kind person that Espresso is deep down. He's just always so bothered by how little sleep he's getting, even though he doesn't think he needs sleep. It's made him sort of like crass and irritable, but Espresso does have good values deep down. Wow, I said I wasn't going to talk about this, and then I ended up talking for like 3 straight minutes.
You went on for like half the video of your life. Definitely agree where the relationship perk doesn't work. The thing about them is, I feel like the stories between them make more sense in the term of a mutual relationship that, like, you know, a mutual respect, where, like, they learn off of each other, where, you know, Espresso seems like this major introvert, but Madeleine is this, like, heavy extrovert, where they have such different personalities, which is understandable why one wouldn't like the other for just obvious reasons. However, because of that, obviously the love department makes no sense, but seeing the story where they can learn from each other, like poking out each other's mistakes, like, you know, oh, Madeleine, you have such a giant ego, or Espresso, you need to get out more often, stuff like that. Like, I feel like that works way more. But obviously, as an actual love thing, that's another thing where I just couldn't see it happening. That's why I think it's fitting to put in no thank you.
I love their dynamic. I don't love it as a love dynamic.
Yeah.
And then we get to Glitternade. That's sort of
that's newer, I'd say.
That's getting, like, blindsided in comparison to Espressoland. That's like going from an hour-long video to, like, a 4-minute video in terms of content.
True.
I think Glitternade's fine. Again, one of those situations where neither are, like, my favorite characters, so I tend to kind of ignore them. But I do think that they're the best option for each other. Prior to Black Lemonade, there wasn't really any ship you could make with Shining Glitter that really made sense. If you were making a ship with Shining Glitter, it was a rare pair, and you really needed to explain yourself. But, like, if you say, oh, I like Shining Glitter and Black Lemonade, everybody knows what you're getting at. So I think it's the best. I do think they could get together. It's more of a personal, I'm not a big fan of Shining Glitter or Black Lemonade, and therefore I'm not the biggest fan of the relationship, not because I think it's bad, but because I just don't really care about the characters as individuals.
You know, I kind of do agree with that. I will say I do care for Black Lemonade a little bit more than Shining Glitter, because I feel like as an original, like, rock cookie, in comparison to everything else. Of course, you know, there's Rockstar Cookie, but I feel like he's also developed an OvenBreak, but as a Kingdom storyline, I feel like Black Lemonade has a lot more to give off. But personally, I just think the relationship is fine. Like, the only thing we know about their backstory is that they were once together, you know, her and Basics Cookie in an old band, and then Shining Glitter split off to do her own thing in K-pop, not Cake Pops, that's different, but just doing her own, like, pop music stuff, then suddenly returning, and showing that how Black Lemonade, at least through the storyline of the Summer Soda Rock Festa, Black Lemonade can still show that, you know, even just both of them, they still show that they have a mutual, like, liking toward each other and respect, which heavily shows at the end, because after everything gets settled with, I'm pretty sure it was a Rockstar's concert and stuff. Shining Glitter couldn't stay for that, but she decided to stay for the Shining Glitter, or Black Lemonade couldn't stay for that, but she stayed for the Shining Glitter concert. Despite everything that happened between both of them in the story, it still seemed like they mutually respected each other and appreciated, you know, just music in general. I know it sounded very scrumbled up, like what I said, but I hope it kind of made sense from what I said.
I think it made sense. I think you can edit that down into something that's palpable.
Yeah, or I could just cut my words out altogether, just saying it's good.
Yeah, it's good. Shining Glitter and Black Lemonade is good.
I would say
we're gonna like it.
Mix, yeah, I'd say like.
Halitaya.
Interesting.
Halitaya is actually in a very similar place as Glitternade for me. I do think it could happen. It's not happening yet, but I do think it could happen. I like both the characters, but neither of the characters are my absolute favorites. I do think Halitaya is, out of all the ships you could make with Pataya or Hollyberry, I do think it's their best option. I like it, but it's not like, it doesn't goo goo gaga.
A thing about this is, like, I'm kind of similar, except I feel like I'm on the side where it still doesn't click, and I know they had a lot of story, like, development, especially with the Legend of the Red Dragon storyline, where it made sense, of them pairing up as an actual team, but I feel like the relationship bends down to, worthy rival. It's kind of similar to Chili Pepper and Rye Cookie, but it's way more developed. Like, obviously, Hollyberry and Pitaya Dragon are both insane rivals to each other, and sure, maybe, like, Hollyberry has slain Pitaya Dragon more in the past, but it's the only, like, cookie who I would say could get to her with ease, and just has a lot more to offer, if that makes sense. You definitely see a lot more of their cookie-esque, like, not, how do I say this? It's like human side, where it's not focusing on their ancient mystical abilities and stuff. Just focusing on them being actual, like, people. Like, just communicating with each other. Which I think that's good because, it'd be cool if them just to be, the formal, like, rival thing. But as an actual, like, love-to-love thing, I feel like that'd be kind of odd. It's like, Hollyberry just walks up to Dark Cacao and Peter going like, hey, meet my new dragon boyfriend.
See, I guess that's where I would disagree with you slightly there. I wouldn't do it like that. I would probably think of it as, like, they've probably had, like, some sort of on and off situationship thing. I don't think Hollyberry would tell the other ancients. I think that would be, like, a well-kept secret. But I'm of the opinion that they could get together, or maybe they have gotten together in the past. I do think it could happen, or it had happened. I guess we'll put it in like, maybe? Question mark?
I'm saying either, like a very high indifferent, because this seems like it's way more capable to happen than, like, Claudine and Financier.
What if we made Chili Rye, but we made it more developed, and also it was a dragon and an immortal woman.
True.
Girl boss.
Alright, I'll bear with you. I'll put it in like, only just because I feel like also in regards to dynamic, it does work well, and I could see them as a thing.
And then we get to the opposite of that.
Now, what the hell do you call this?
This is Leof. That's what I call it.
I call it crack ship.
It's like, it's one of those crack ships that's, like, popular enough. I was kind of debating whether I should put this, but I think this is, like, the most popular crack ship. Like, out of all the crack ships, this is the one that, like, gets a decent amount of fan art. I don't know how involved you are in Cookie Run fan art, but there are even people who make black garlic their child.
That makes so much sense, and it makes so little sense.
I guess, like, you get the emo of licorice, and you get the kawaii YouTuber of parfait,
Yeah.
and the crossroads of that is black garlic. But it's also extremely funny because you cannot get black garlic out of the ingredients of licorice and parfait.
No.
I was talking to someone earlier in a voice chat, and they were like, parfait is actually onion ice cream, and that's how we got to black garlic as a flavor. And I was like, that's hilarious, but also so untrue, but also hilarious.
This just feels like one of those ones where just, you look at it and just like, on paper, you can kind of see it, even though you can't see it at all. It's just like, not knowing anything about story, it's like, you have this, cookie who's like all about darkness and evil schemes, then you have this cookie who's like high energy and like light and bubbly. It could make sense, but I don't even think they ever interacted with each other once. Like,
have you ever seen that, like, Dexter's Lab screenshot where it's like him in front of the locker and it's like, I have failed you?
Yes.
That's what Leof is to me. That's like licorice, like being on the locker and being like, I have failed you, Parfait Cookie. And, like, Parfait Cookie doesn't even know who the heck he is.
You're right.
It's like, Parfait Cookie would look at him, and he'd be like, oh, I'm in the hit band Bad 4, and she'd be like, what?
What?
So I'd put it in no thank you.
I'd say this
it's
is
not
mixed
for
between
me.
Big underdeveloped and no thank you, because this has not been touched on at all, but definitely it doesn't make
You've
sense
never
either.
interacted, but it's one of those where the fandom just kind of went with it and ran because of the, like, opposite aesthetics sort of thing.
Right.
Now we're on to HyperHimes' favorite ship.
I'm just going, let's get a photo right there.
He didn't even say anything yet, bro!
Fun fact, I don't know what OTP means, but I think it's overly tearful power.
OTP in fandom speak is one true pairing. Like, your absolute favorite of favorites.
Okay, yeah. One true pairing tier. Now, I don't know.
You were like, I don't know what OTP means, but I'm going to put them in OTP because it's the one on top.
See, this is the best way that I can describe this in this most basic summary term is Mint Coco for me is Sea Moon for Megan. Genuinely, I think the connection is so good.
They're like my lesbians, but it's actually a bisexual man and his girlfriend.
Like, there's so many things. Like, it really goes to show how much that they truly care for each other. Like, even saying, like, you know, from every single aspect. Like, you know, both of them, obviously, they're a friendly run combi. They like being together in, like, the big Coco mugs. There's the dream sequence that I think it was either Coco or Mint Choco. It was either one of them, but they
It was Mint Choco's dream.
Yeah, it was Mint Choco dream, and, like, I guess Coco was interested in some other band, and Mint Choco. It showed how really, truly, deeply how he cared about Coco, not just as a fan, but as a person. And on that other side of the aspect, you have Coco Cookie, where in one of her relationship chart thing with Mint Choco, she says that Mint Choco is the only thing that's sweeter than, like, the only thing that Coco sweeters is him. Which is, that's a world wonder if I've ever heard it. And it even goes to the point where there was like the Cookie Box channel where they released that one music video, basically based around the relationship of Mint Choco and Coco, which, if you want to get even further into the wormhole, their Korean voice actors are literally married. And they're a happy couple, and they're healthy. I don't know how much more I need to press onto it, and obviously the mix, if we're just talking about basic mixtures of cocoa and, like, mint chocolate candy, which I'm pretty sure is, like, something you would spray, like, or sprinkle on top of a cocoa, it's a wonderful combination, like a mint sort of candy on top of cocoa. It's like a match made in heaven, like how people usually put, like, little candy canes inside their hot chocolate. It's one of them, I'd say it's so fitting for each other that it's one of the most perfect ships that you could have, and that's just from my general standpoint.
My standpoint is on Mint Coco is I think that if you don't ship them, you're kind of like misunderstanding their characters almost. I know that's kind of a leap. That's kind of a big thing to say, but I think they are so central in each other's character dynamic and each other's story that even if you don't ship them romantically, you have to acknowledge at the very least that even if you don't think it's romantic, that there is some sort of love between them just as two people. Even if for you that's not romantic, I think it's romantic. I think they're so intertwined that to say that they don't love each other in any sort of way is to just misunderstand their characters as individuals. And then we get to polyancients.
I don't know how to feel about this one.
This is a can of worms. We got 5 people in here. So many people that I didn't want to make a PNG for it.
Yeah.
So many people that I went in Photoshop and I was just like, I'm just gonna type the word polyancients and not even use their faces. I can't see it as a working polycule. I think there are too many things happening. Too many things for us to put in this little, however many minute it is, video. But I can't see it working as a healthy polycule. I think of polyancients as like a band, like a rock band, more than I think of it as a relationship, if I'm being frank.
See, it's similar to me. I don't think of them as a relationship. I see them more as like the group of friends you hang out on in like Friday night playing Uno. Like that
would be the wildest game of Uno. We should make it a tier. But I think they should play Uno. They play Uno on the weekend. Polyancients play Uno on the weekend.
That's what they do.
You know what? I think the same thing for poly champions. We should put them in. They play Uno on the weekend.
Yeah, I'd say it. Their personalities are so heavily different where, like, as a relationship, I think it's weird if it worked. I mean, maybe it could, especially since there's less people, so it wouldn't be as, like, you know, a tangle of webs, but they'd still play Uno on the weekend.
Yeah, that's what I think of poly champions. I think they're inseparable from each other. I think they're like ease into developing each of their backstories. I think a relationship might be a little too much, but I do think the Uno games are spicy.
Make it a game of poker night on Earthbread. Let's see that.
Poker night on Earthbread. Who's the dealer? Sparkling?
Honestly, probably Timekeeper.
And now we get to Night Princess. Definitely not Uno tier.
Definitely not.
To me, Night Princess is that sort of, I can definitely see it feeling both ways, but they're the type of people who would never say anything about it to each other, because Night would just Knight is the type of person who keeps everything bottled to himself, if we're being real. He's always like, oh, I must for the princess! Like, that Crunchy Dreams sequence just really nailed in the characterization they were going for there, because it was so funny, because they were having everybody flirt with Princess, even people who would, like, never flirt with Princess. Like, why would a Claire flirt with Princess? That's not happening.
That's not.
Knight made that up because he's that scared someone else dating her.
Right.
And that's hilarious. I think Princess could feel it back, but it's one of those almost like it's doomed to never happen because Knight is just that much of a stone box. But I'd put it in I like it.
I agree. I would probably put in I like it too, because I agree exactly. Because my feelings about Knight and Princess is just, you know, Dev Sisters, Cookie Run, doesn't matter if it's Kingdom or OvenBreak, they keep trying to push and push and push that this would be a couple. But I just know it's not gonna happen. Like, there's no chance anywhere that either one of them, because, like, Knight is too cowardly and Princess is too ignorant. You can tell that they care for each other, but, like, no one's gonna pop the question. Like, you know, it's just not gonna, and it kind of makes me upset, but, like, at this point, it's just become, like, reoccurring fate, where the moment that you see those two on screen, you just know nothing special is going to happen. Like, unless if there's some event that happens that's like, oh, it's between those two, after that, it's just dropped. Like, you'll just easily forget.
It's like One Piece. It's never going to end.
Yeah.
They're never gonna get the One Piece. They're never gonna get the Knight-Princess relationship.
They're gonna finally get the One Piece and realize, wait, this is only one half? And then 400 more seasons, woo!
And then we get to Pure Cacao. Pure Cacao is hard for me to talk about on a purely canon standpoint.
Right.
Because Pure Cacao in canon is very minimal, but I like what was done with it. But the fandom makes me hate Pure Cacao. I don't know how involved you are with fandom, but fandom Pure Cacao makes me just quake in my boots. But canon Pure Cacao, I don't see them dating, but I like the subtlety of it. Like, it's something that I could easily, like, get behind shipping. It's not anything that's gonna make me insane, but I liked how sort of soft it is, almost, in contrast to Dark Cacao's usual very sort of hard character. I think it's nice to have that sort of softness to him and calmness that Pure Vanilla can bring to him in that letter. But as for fandom, some of the things you people do to those poor men make me want to scream.
In all honesty, underdeveloped. And this is just because, well, like you mentioned, because I'm usually focused on the canon aspect of it. Anything fandom is, of course, I just call it non-canon, it's not official. Whatever you think in your heads, you think in your heads. It's a good thing I'm not very enveloped with the fandom, or else I would probably be, my brains would probably be shrunken. If I wasn't stuttering enough in videos, I would be a broken record player in the videos if I was more involved in the fandom. And genuinely, as two characters, yeah, sure, it could work, but they haven't really had much screen time. And yeah, sure, they've had screen time together, but it wasn't one-on-one. It's usually with, like, you know, Hollyberry, or it's like with Clouded Cream, or it's with, like, Ginger Brave and all those other cookies, where it's not even with them talking to each other. It's very, very laid back and not very much worked on. And the times where they have talked, it's like very minimum. It's like, I don't know, normal conversation. So I just say
it's very like
barely much.
It's very all the conversations we've had between them, except for that one at the end of the Dark Cacao story. They were all very like work conversations in sort of tone. It's nothing like, we've not seen them had their how was the weather conversation. We've all seen the like, oh, we're gonna need you to change the Excel sheet when you have a chance type conversations.
Right, like, instead of, like, having, like, two ancients, like, just having, like, oh, there could be ship dynamic, but instead they just have, like, minimal to, like, no connection to each other, which, yeah, there's connection, but there's, like, no conversation. We would definitely instead need, like, two ancients who, like, basically had a near love interest and have worked together all the time, and I don't know where I could exactly find that. Wait a minute.
I don't know where I could find that, says HyperHimes, when Pure Lily is looming in the corner.
No, you better help me with this one. This one's shaking a lot.
Oh no! I think it's gravitating toward the top of the tier list!
Yeah, I think it's really, oh no, oh, it's going toward the weekend! Oh, it's going toward—
Oh no! You gotta bring him back down! You gotta bring him down!
Oh, my arm. Oh, my arm.
Your forearm, Sir HyperHimes!
I had to bust out that reverse card real quick. Oh.
You had to knock him down a few pegs.
Yeah. Or at least by one.
Pure Lily. I do have a soft spot for Pure Lily, but I have a soft spot for Pure Lily mostly for personal reasons and not canon reasons. I think that Pure Lily, in terms of canon, it's just, again, it's another one of those crunchy dreams wrenches.
Right.
Where it was like, that Crunchy Dreams was like, how do I say this in the most child-friendly way? A kick to the rib cage.
Yeah.
I was one of those people. I'm one of those people where I have very strict definitions of what canon means. And the phrase, do I still have feelings for her, fits into my very strict definition of canon. And that sort of rocked my whole world in early 2022. It was this year, was it? Was it this year?
Maybe it was early this year.
Yeah, I think it was early 2023. Now that I'm out of college, they're all blending together.
Yeah, that's bound to happen.
That line was really rocking my world in early 2023. I think it's solely because of just how often they've been together. You can see the relationship between them. That's it for me, because they've simply, like, Pure Vanilla is someone who is very tight-lipped and to himself, but because he's been with White Lily again and again and again, he's had the chance to think of his relationship with her again and again and again, and finally be able in the current day to pin them down as romantic. But, like, Mans is, like, 1,000 years old, and if it took him that long to realize that those feelings for White Lily may have been romantic, like, it's kind of doomed. It's kind of always been doomed, but that's part of the intrigue of them, for me at least.
Right, like, I barely have much to say in regards to what you said, but in general, I feel like one of the big motivators just between the two of them is just because, you know, you've seen them connected so much, and basically in the main story, basically one of the primary stories that you're bound to read through in the game, it definitely goes over time, not even just like in one or two worlds. Over time, it really shows and exposes each character from Pure Vanilla and White Lily. Like, from them being together to exposing soon that White Lily is actually a ghost, to what really happened to White Lily, and who exactly White Lily really is, and to how Pure Vanilla, in a sense, still cares and still hopes that White Lily, you know, is still doing good. Like, just to some form of extent. And, of course, that's one of the heavy motivators of it, is that Pure Vanilla will always still care for White Lily, no matter what condition that, you know, she's in. Which, hey, we don't know if White Lily's technically still alive, we don't know about that, but if it really is the thought that counts, because I think this is, while I think Mint Coco is better, I think this relationship between the both of them is kind of like the backbone of the main story of the game, if that makes sense.
Had they not met, basically everything else wouldn't have happened. Like their relationship, whether you think of it as romantic or not, was a catalyst for basically everything we know today. So I think even if you don't ship it, you have to acknowledge the sheer power that it has over the narrative in Cookie Run. And now we get to the reason of my Discord status being the great red pastry debate.
Oh,
I have been
boy.
so excited to debate red pastry for the entire day.
You see, everyone who's watching this right now, what you've just been seeing so far was child's play. Now you've entered the wrestling ring.
This is where Mahimeghan and HyperHimes have a fight.
Legitimately.
We are about to brawl.
Now, you've been doing everything first. I want to hear what your thoughts are.
You want to hear what my thoughts are on red pastry? Red pastry, you know what? I'm gonna get my iPhone notes for red pastry just to make sure I say my piece right.
The equipment is happening right now.
The equipment. I need my equipment. In terms of fandom, red pastry is such a dividing force, and I think there's something to say about that, whether you like the ship or dislike the ship. That red pastry by itself is enough for people to put in their bios, do not interact with me if you like red pastry. That just goes to show just how powerful the dynamic between them is if people are willing to say do not do so much as look at me if you think they could be in a romance. As for me, as for Mahimeghan on YouTube in the year of September 2023, when we've only had one update with them, I think that they should interact more. Do I think they should get in a relationship? No, I don't think they should get in a relationship. But I think that the dynamic could be something along the lines of what Madeline and Espresso have, where they bring out good things in each other's characters, because the crux of both Pastry and Red Velvet as we know them is that they've both only been seeing one side of the story, and them meeting up, their crossroads, represents them finding out that they have not been seeing the whole truth. They've only been fed whatever their mentors have been feeding them, and whatever that has been fed isn't the entire story. So them meeting up is sort of like a firework going off effect, where they realize that there's just so much that they don't know about the world. And I think that they should interact again and come to terms with the fact that they've been hiding in these shells for so long, and they need to see just how much world is out there, because what they share is that they have both been so sheltered for their entire life that they have these very small ideas about the world. Like, Red Velvet is almost never included in Cookies of Darkness stories. Like, he was not there at all for the entire Cacao update, and I don't know if that's, like, intentional, or if it's because they got a really popular voice actor for him in English, but I almost feel like it just goes to show just how sheltered Red Velvet is being by a Dark Enchantress, and just how sheltered Pastry is by Reverend Mother. I think them meeting represents such big character development for both parties, but they shouldn't date.
I at least agree with you on the fact that they definitely should not date, because if we can just get past all the weeds, just like all the high grass, it boils down to if you think that they should date, it's a definite no. Like, we'll just automatically put this right there. I will say, if you want my personal opinion, obviously just from face value, from seeing just the main primary story that they were related to each other from the Tower of Sweet Chaos, the relationship cannot work. Now, if you talk to me in regards to character development, yes, I think not just Pastry or not just Red Velvet alone, but both do deserve a lot of heavy character development and need more character about them to be discovered. Though, in my personal opinion, I think it makes sense that they should discover it by themselves, or at least not have them related to each other in regards to a story until a later point. I feel like they should discover each other more about themselves first, because, as you mentioned with the Reverend Mother cookie, and the whole storyline with that going on, I think there's more things hidden under the wraps that Pastry Cookie does not even know about. Like, maybe this is just a whole entire manipulation process of all I know, and I know I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist right now, but also, we could also delve into the Red Velvet prospect, where obviously there's a reason why we can say that Pastry's in the wrong and Red Velvet's in the right, because, Red Velvet doesn't just treat the Cacounts that he raises like actual armies. Like, yeah, sure, they are actual enemies that you'll basically find within any of the levels in Cookie Run, but, of course, there are some that he treats like actual animals, like actual pets, not even just as pets, but as friends. Like, should I even need to mention, like, Chiffon, or Cake Beerus, or any of the ones that he's, like, raised to not only fight fair, but also he can treat as a friend, which you have to bear in mind with Red Velvet. He has this caring nature to him, most likely because when Red Velvet first appeared, when it just came out of the oven, oops, I have no arm, but it was Dark Enchantress who was like, alright, let me give you a new arm, and basically became sort of a mother figure to him, so it gave him it gave him a good reason to be under some sort of light of, like, being a protective person, which this is why he wanted to defend any of the Cacounts and stuff from Pastry, but also you have to understand why, Pastry is doing what she needs to do, because it's the Cookies of Darkness. Like, you could say any sort of Cookie of Darkness, and of course, it's gonna be into negative thoughts. like any sort, they have a negative sort of backstory, and you could say, yeah, Pomegranate's the worst of them all, I'd say, but even every single one of them have some form of like a dark development where, of course, sure, some I'd say are better than others, like you could say like Poison Mushroom is just like on like a mindless child, but like has still committed purposefully evil acts, like poisoning a whole punch bowl and making Strawberry and Wizard turn to like better boss characters than actual playable characters. Are you kidding me? That's so stupid. Just
oh my
in general.
gosh, that Wizard and Strawberry fight. That I was stuck on that level in dark mode for so long.
It's stupid.
It's probably easy now because of all the power scaling, but that was like before we had magic candies.
Right.
So
But
it was such a hard level. But I also think something worth bringing up for Red Velvet at least is because of the cake harm, he's essentially become almost a hybrid cookie. Like
Right.
when you ask him if he's cake or cookie, he doesn't respond one way or another. He's gained a personal kinship with those he trains in his army because he's part of them. So I don't know. I think that Red Pastry, I could make like a whole video about their character dynamic, but I can't see them dating.
you know what we should do? We should make another video on your channel where it's like Red Pastry pros and cons.
Red Pastry pros and cons.
The pros, they exist. Cons, the dictionary.
You are the most violent Red Pastry hater in all the land. All the Red Pastry haters vow to your word, HyperHimes.
Thank you very much.
And then we get to Sea Moon.
Now, see, whoa, that went up, whoa. Whoa, 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 what's going up?
Please don't put them in Uno. I don't think either of them know what Uno
I don't
is.
think they- Muno.
Muno!
Now, I know you have a lot to say about this one.
Honestly, whenever I talk about Sea Moon, my words tend to be swept away, almost like the ocean tides, but Moonlight is so significant in Seafary's character development. Like, a lot of what Seafary is basically how much she loves not even just Moonlight Cookie, but just the moon itself. And there's definitely a way that you can see Seafary and be like, wow, her character is so one-dimensional. But especially when you get into OvenBreak in particular, especially like the Sugar Tira story and how her involvement was in that, it's just, she just has so much. The crux of Seafary's story is that she is fighting against her fate as a deity because she loves the moon so much. Her place in the sea is supposed to be that of like a god who is making sure that all of the sea is okay, but she doesn't wish to be a god. Like in the Sherbet story where he meets all the legendaries, she just casually mentions that she's not a guardian anymore. She is given up that life simply to pursue the moon. That is just how much the moon moves her. And just her love of the moon is basically what brings every sort of relationship in Cookie Run. Her love of the moon is why she abandoned Sugar Tira and why Abyss Monarch fell from grace. Her love of the moon is what was able to get rid of some of the ships that were attacking Tear Crown. Her love of the moon is what made the Tower of Frozen Waves exist. Her love of the moon is that why the mermaids don't have powers on the nights of the eclipse. Seafary's love of the moon is just so intertwined with the canon story of Cookie Run and the cookies of the oceans that to not acknowledge it is to just be such a disservice to Seafary's character. They don't say it as canon, but like but to say it isn't canon is to just basically ignore major details of Seafary's character.
I can appreciate why there's so much love behind this pairing. I'm not even trying to undermine it. There's genuinely a lot of love, and I've seen how much Seafary has cared for Moonlight Cookie, which makes sense. It's basically so obvious, especially with how much more obvious it's been in regards to the Mermaid's Tale story. I only have one glaring flaw and that, to me, it seems very heavily one-sided. Like, it very much feels like it's more one-sided of, Seafarer really loving, the moon, i.e. Moonlight, but how much does the moon really love the sea, i.e. Seafarer? Because I can tell how much Seafarer does appreciate the moon, because even in the little April Fool's joke dating event, you'll never fall in love with Sierra, what was it, like Sierra Seafarer or whatever? Sierra Fairy? She'll always be in love with the moon. And you're just kind of like there. But I've never really seemed to find some sort of a STEM-worthy thing where the moon is in love with the sea as well. Like, unless if I haven't seen that much in regards to the story of Cookie Run, then maybe, but I don't know. It just seems a lot more memorable that Sea Fairy loves Moonlight, but not the other way around. However, I'm not saying it isn't cute. I think it's adorable. Like, one thing that I always remember loving, and I'm just gonna say right now, what I'm about to say isn't canon. A little while ago, I remember when the YouTube creator who also made Cookie Run content, Mole Maniac, actually did this fan-made Cookie Run detective thing. And it was based around, like, I think it was like a Chinese New Year thing? And at the very end of it, we actually see this cute little dialogue between Sea Fairy and Moonlight. And it was so adorable seeing something that looked so official, and I think it's like the closest official thing we'll get to Moonlight and Sea Fairy being together. Though the things that you did bring up with Sea Fairy, about being this whole entire thing about trying to defeat fate of what really is coming to her and trying to reach the moon, is genuinely still adorable, which is why I'm still going to put up an OTP. I do think the glaring flaw is still presentable, but maybe I'll just lock that up to the fact that maybe there's not enough lore that I know about.
No, you're correct. The only real piece we have of them being together is a Bond story in Kingdom where they see each other for the first time, because a lot of Moonlight lore centers around the fact that the wizard's disappearing has made her so depressed that she essentially sleeps all the time to get away from reality. So she's probably only really seen Sea Fairy when she's awake or something and hasn't interacted with her much. And I think there's definitely a lot that can be done on her side to make the relationship more mutual. My Discord icon has been Sea Fairy for as long as I can remember. You met me when I had a Sea Fairy icon. Most people met me when I had a Sea Fairy Discord icon. It never changes.
Right.
Because my own girlfriend always has a Moonlight icon, so we like to match.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a lot that can be done on Moonlight's side, but I can also understand why there hasn't been a lot of reciprocation because of just how Moonlight handles her grief of losing the wizards and how that almost makes it impossible for her to reach the sea because of how the sea is yearning for the moon, but the moon is so stagnant that it hasn't done anything to yearn for the sea. And then Sparkling Herb happens.
Yeah, mid.
Did you just say mid?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a mid tier and just put the Sparkling Herb in mid, because what I've learned is I joined the Cookie Run fandom in 2021. I joined during the Hollyberry update. What I've learned from Blossom, my girlfriend specifically, was into Cookie Run around 2016 when OvenBreak was in its prime and Kingdom wasn't a thing, is that Sparkling Herb was never a thing in OvenBreak, but they just started making official art for it for Kingdom, and people just started shipping them together. I guess because I think in terms of fandom, not in terms of canon, I'm just speaking of fandom here. Fandom loves when they can see two characters that could be white boy twinks getting together.
Personally, it basically does stem down to what you say. It makes sense with what you say, because personally, whenever I see Sparkling and Herb, I can see why it would be a thing, but the only reason is because you've just given me one half of the juice bar plebs. You've given me Sparkling and Herb, so you may as well throw in Vampire and Mint Choco, which, if you want my personal opinion, I think a ship that makes way more sense is Sparkling Vampire, because you have the person serving the drinks and you have the heavy drinker. I think it's just a match made in heaven.
I was considering putting Spark Vampire on here, but we already have Sparkling Herb, and I think Sparkling Herb has risen to more popularity, at least in like terms of like fan arts by people who aren't in the English-speaking fandom. I feel like I've seen a lot of Sparkling Herb from non-English artists, and it comes a lot down to just like they're both in the juice bar regulars. They just keep making official art of them next to each other.
Yeah.
So like I can personally see an established friendship here. Personally, my favorite Sparkling Herb dynamic headcanon is that they're exes, that like they tried to date for a little while and then they realized that they're just not compatible with each other because Sparkling has such a rigid schedule and then Herb just has like a very like la-di-da, I do what I do and I want to do schedule, so they would like never end up going on dates and being like, wow, we don't really work romantically. Let's just stick as friends.
Or be like, you know, I really like Sparkling, but ever since he gave the crop champagne, like, it just wasn't the same.
He put champagne in my garden. Now I'm going to kill him for it and not be his lover. I think it's a very funny they were exes dynamic, but as far as canon goes, it's like, okay, I think most of you people are shipping this because you think they could be mildly attractive men who are into each other. Not for anything they actually did with each other in canon. And then T-Clair is a thing that exists.
They exist?
It was
like, what else can we say?
Personally, I have never seen this as a romantic relationship simply because I think there's a huge age gap here. I personally see Eclair as in like his mid to late 30s and T-Knight is at least like 60 something.
I would say at
and
least like
I've
late
never
50s.
been a huge fan of big age gaps in relationships. I've always seen this as the sort of like the scholar finding the subject of his research and being like super excited because of like a role model thing, a sort of almost parasocial thing. He's so excited to see T-Knight, not because he loves him romantically, but he loves what he stands for and what he's done as a warrior, not because he wants to date him or anything like that.
Definitely, again, seems like a relationship that's more based around admiration. I see them as, if we're talking just separately, both of them are characters I really enjoy, but if we're talking about if we made them together, it doesn't make sense. Like, I love both the characters when they were released in the story. Like, I love how Tina is like this, you know, aged once dragon fighter, like, technically retired, but then came back into action, and Eclair's this, like, person who is such a fanatic for old historian stuff. But seeing them together, I can't really see it, nor do I think they've had really enough momentum together to really show off seeing if one like the other or the other like one. It just really just feels like, oh, Eclair really likes how T-Knight is and what they represented back, you know, when the dragons used to attack.
It's definitely, romantic-wise, it's a no thank you.
Yeah.
But, like, seeing them together, like, interact with each other, I'd be more than happy to see them talk to each other again, because they haven't talked to each other in, like, a year or more. And then Wild Chip, that has a ton of screen time. And they're always talking to each other.
I have a proclamation for this one.
What is your proclamation?
The boys!
Da boys!
The boys!
You know what? That's a great descriptor for Wild Chip, if we're being frank.
Yeah.
Because Wild Chip, again, I know you're not as involved in fandom, but I'm going to take a little fandom break here. Odyssey Part 1 released, right? And people didn't really know what to do with Crunchy Chip, Wildberry, and Clotted Cream. So people were shipping Clotted Cream and Wildberry and like writing fan fictions of them getting together. And then Odyssey Part 2 dropped and it was crickets in the Wildberry Clotted Cream fandom.
Yep.
Everybody just like deserted and abandoned ship to go to Wild Chip, and it was really funny watching that happen in real time.
Yeah, like, again, like, since I'm more aficionated with, like, the whole story, even if I haven't seen the entirety of the Cookie Odyssey story, I've seen something major, which is just, you know, I think it's like a video where it's like Cookie Odyssey best moment, and like 90% of it is just Wildberry and Crunchy Chip, which I could just say from that standalone fact, it shows how much development the both of them had. Like, you can see them both as such two different parallels. Like, Crunchy Chip is more like rowdy, more aggressive, while Wildberry is more, you know, standalone, like stern and also assertive. Just, you know, the strong and silent type, while Crunchy Chip is also the strong type, but very rowdy and loud, and just very charismatic. And just seeing the two of them being in these situations where they somehow work with each other with their unique formats of talking and how they care about things, it is such literal genius, where whenever you see the both of them on screen, that's when your eyes start to widen up and really open up. And would I say that they work romantically? Through the experiences that they have, I would most likely say yes. Like, I'd say even more than how the ancients could potentially work, because of the experiences that they have indeed gone through, where you've shown that they've grown to like each other, and you've seen that they can grow past any sort of quarrel that they've been through. It's just genuinely fun when you see the both of them around.
Yes, it's always a delight to see just how they banter, especially not in a ship way when Clotted Cream's around. It's fun to see the solidarity they have around Clotted Cream and his antics. I think one thing that I always think about with Wild Chip is that they both act more like their superior. Crunchy Chip is more like Hollyberry, and Wildberry acts more like Dark Cacao in a sort of ironic way, whereas in like Wildberry is sort of standoffish and introverted but very strong, whereas Crunchy Chip is more sociable and loud, and he says his opinions right away. If he doesn't like something, he's going to comment on it. And I think it's very funny to see that sort of inverted dynamic where the Dark Cacao character is that sort of loud and brash, whereas the Hollyberryan character is more subdued and has like this more sort of silent inner strength that only comes out in certain moments. I think it's just, they have such a great dynamic, whereas regardless of if you see them romantically, if you don't like seeing them together, then like what's the point? Because they're such a strong factor in Odyssey, and they're just such a fun thing to see, where it's like, oh, you get to an Odyssey chapter where they're hanging out again, and it automatically puts a smile on your face because their dynamic is just one that's just so much fun to look at. I think I really like it as a great tier for these two because they're just so much fun when they come together because of how much they contrast each other and how much their relationship dynamic is similar to Hollyberry and Cacao, but without the whole we've lived for 1,000 years and been separated from 500 and are responsible for making political decisions that affect every single person in the world type thing. And here we have it, folks. This is our tier list.
This is our opinions? With
the updated tiers of mid, underdeveloped, and they play Uno on the weekends, which is above OTP because HyperHimes doesn't know how to use a browser.
Shh. Fix it, don't worry.
I hope you all enjoyed me rambling about things. If you liked hearing me ramble at length about Cookie Run fandom, you should go subscribe to me. But if you like hearing someone ramble about Cookie Run canon and screaming at the text, then you should definitely subscribe to Himes over here, and I would like to definitely thank him for inviting me to collab with him on this video today.
Yeah, and I should have definitely said this at the beginning, but please, if you... Let's just say this right now, these are our opinions. Like, please be respectful. Like, if you say that you disagree with one opinion, that is fine. I actually do appreciate, like, healthy, debates in the comments. I don't want full-fledged fights. Like, if that happens, then, I wouldn't really welcome that because I don't want the community being even more toxic and brutal to each other. We all just deserve a place where we can say our opinions, we can respect those opinions, reply with different opinions, and then we can base off a cool friendship from there. I'm just saying that if you're a pro shipper, you burn in hell. Anyway, with that being said, thank you all for watching.
If you're a pro shipper, we're sending you to the red velvet oven.
Yeah.
But with that said, here is the opinions that we have collectively made. And if you don't like them, that's cool, as long as you can be respectful about it.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's enough from me. Mahimeghan out. Peace be with you.
Yeah, see all the link stuff in the description I have, Twitter thing, 10,000 links, I don't care. But, like, share, do all that stuff. And this is like one of the first times I'm doing a collab with someone with an actual voice. But as I mentioned before, I just do my intro and stuff. Please subscribe to Mahimeghan. Actually makes very high quality stuff. I'm not even joking, that stuff is addicting to watch. I probably binge watched all of them, but I forget them, which is great because I can watch them again. But with that being said, hey, subscribe, like, do all that stuff, and above all else, I'll see you all entities and guardians in the next video. Hail the hype knees.
Woo.
Woo.